Hey, folks, good evening. Tonight, we are going to be diving into some of the coaching changes, digging into who we think we should re sign out of the Bills' pending free agents. But first, our guys over at Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how we doing?
I am in a great mood, Greg. Had a vacation this weekend. Weather looks terrible, but I'm still going to be in vacation, and I'm going to have a whole week off. And I probably will still choose to get on Twitter and argue with Bills fans, but I don't have to do it.
I think it's much different when you're doing it from the beach of a tropical island. I think that's a different Twitter experience.
We'll see. How about you? How you doing?
Good. A lot of interesting
going on this week.
A lot of interesting things going on this week. I see you added a little something down there at the bottom of the screen. I've been doing a lot of preparations with getting ready to premiere a new show on Friday night, and I'm like excited, but also nervous. And I don't really get nervous about things, but I am kind of nervous, kind of getting things together and formulated for it. But really excited to be able to have some fun and talk about other things besides the Bills. I mean, I love the Bills more than anything else, but I also love sports and I'm a sports fanatic. So I'm excited to be able to branch out and talk about some other fun things.
I'm excited for you, and you put a good team together, I see. Yeah. And so really excited to see how it plays. I will be traveling Friday, but I will catch it on YouTube when I land there, when I settle.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Some awesome folks. You guys might know Lauren, who is always in our chat. Our man, Low Buffa Ceilings. Chris is going to be my producer. Some people might see Omega Outlier, another guy who's always around us online. Some really sharp, funny people that have been helping me get ideas together. And they've been a riot to get some things together. So it's been a lot of fun. And at a minimum, we're going to have a good time. Well, hopefully that results in a good show. But tonight,
what else can you do?
Yeah, we still have some Bills stuff going on here. I think this will be the third time that I try to tell you that there's no more coaching changes coming for the Bills. We actually had a wide receiver coach swap out here. So after the last show ended, we had talked about, okay, we fired the safety coach, brought in a new safety coach. Like, all right, it's not the end of the world.
There's your scapegoat. And
all right, I guess there's a sacrificial lamb. We have some kind of change. And then the day after the show, wide receiver coach Chad Hall left.
Well, we were live on Spaces. Chris Kepner and I were just like, I was about to get into a dissertation about having realistic expectations for the offseason. And then all of a sudden somebody threw in live on Spaces. So that a great episode to catch our immediate reaction to it. But yeah, Chad Hall, wasn't expecting that after you said. I texted you right away, Greg. I was like, dude, you told me we were done
here. So it's a little interesting because there's differing information. There's always things that come out, as these kind of things are going on. There were some things that didn't look awesome as it first started because Chad Hall left to become the wide receiver coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, it is a lateral move. And whenever you have a team leave or a coach leave for a lateral move, it's hard not to have people make assumptions or try to assume why. So obviously there are some things where, if they shared the idea that, maybe Joe Brady was in line ahead of him to be the OC, if something were to happen to Dorsey, maybe that was a reason he wanted to go. Doug Peterson certainly has a great reputation from a development standpoint from there. And also, I think there were some personal things that, as people learned more, some things were shared, I think, by actually Hall's family that, his wife is from Florida and that, this is an opportunity. He made her come up here to New York. We just had 2 generational snowstorms in one winter. All of a sudden, a Florida team is like, hey, we'll pay you the same money to come do that down here. I can see that tugging at them. So
that's not a bad place to be either. That's a
Trevor
ascending
Lawrence.
offense.
Yeah.
That wide receiver room is going to look fantastic when they get Calvin Ridley back. That's a good young core to maybe launch that next phase of your career. I think sometimes, Greg, we forget these dudes are also humans. Like, I think we had people that have those types of jobs where you have some ability to maybe move to another corporate office, like those things pop up. You've done it yourself. You've talked about going back to be closer to family. I know a lot of people have done it. I'm sure at some point my wife and I, we will make a move that is in our own interest that maybe doesn't make sense to people. Maybe it seems like a lateral move that doesn't make sense. They don't have to have the loyalty to the organization the way us fans do, right? Like, we understand Buffalo's a good spot, but there's other opportunities that come up, like you said, whether it's family, whether it's money, whether it's just even a better position to take that next step, like you said.
Yeah. So, I certainly, I won't lie, I had some initial questions. Like, I furrowed my brow when that came up. I was like, why would that happen? He was certainly well liked. I would be hypocritical if I didn't bring up my comments in our season ending show where we talked about, hey, is some of the shine off of him with the lack of development or the assumptions for McKenzie or Davis. So, I don't want to pretend like this was now some devastating loss when I just was talking about some of the shine coming off of how well he was perceived.
I think that was probably where I had the hardest time processing it was, how do I feel about
upset?
this?
Yeah. I
How do
upset?
I feel about this guy? Like, because for the most part, positional coach moves don't bother me all that much. I probably was pounding the table most for the Eric Washington move to happen in terms of lack of development that I've seen under that positional coach.
Agreed. Hall was nowhere near the top of that list.
No, but it's hard to know really what that impact is. And I guess the questions I was looking for to know were answered were like, all right, we know they had wide receivers in his room that weren't being utilized in the way that I think we as fans expected to see and wanted to see. And even it sounds like that the wide receivers want to be used now that we're hearing from them and throughout the Super Bowl week here. Was he an advocate enough in that room with Ken Dorsey for those players? Like, who's responsible for, hey, these guys aren't getting utilized, right? And so that's a lot of the unknowns about these positional coaches. So I didn't know how to feel with them because we hear good things from the players. I do think that matters. Managing players matters. Having a good relationship in that room, especially the wide receiver room where there's only one ball to go around and you already have an alpha, like managing that stuff's tough. I'm not sure how good he was at his job, but I do think now that with this hire, I think fans are going to feel a lot better that this is an easy replaceable type job and there's good candidates out there to find.
So speaking of which, in being very kind to the Cover One Buffalo show, the Buffalo Bills today, right around dinner time, announced that they have hired Adam Henry as the receivers coach. Who, I won't lie, I didn't have a history about Adam Henry. I think Eric had some familiarity that had come up from some previous stops,
but Eric's a different cat. Like, he knows playbooks and things that are different.
Yeah, he's I'm sure he's at a coaching seminar right now, probably.
Yeah.
So he has a very deep history in coaching. It's all around the wide receiver or offensive coordinator role. He's been an offensive coordinator at the college level. Everything else has been pretty centered around wide receivers.
He's coached like Odell Beckham since middle school.
There actually is so when it first came up, I always roll my eyes when it's previous position coach. I'm like, these guys are very transient. That moves around all the time. This is actually a little more than that. So Henry had started in college and was McNeese State, and then had a spot with the Raiders. Then went to LSU. He was their passing game coordinator and wide receivers coach for 3 years, which were the years Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry were there. He then went to the NFL 1 year ahead of time with the 49ers, then went over to the Giants to be the Giants wide receiver coach. Then when Odell Beckham Jr. got traded to the Browns, he went with and got hired at the Browns as their wide receivers coach. And then most recently, he was the wide receiver coach with the Cowboys with Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. He had actually just kind of started with University of Indiana and then was offered this job and came over that way. So
OB to the J to the Bills confirmed.
I'm going to say two things. It does not mean that Odell Beckham Jr. to the Bills is confirmed. It does mean there is now a person in the building who is not only a huge advocate of Odell Beckham Jr., someone who will vouch for the fact that he is very comfortable with managing him personally, but also will be, I'm going to say, a tiebreaker. OBJ is going to take the best contract he can get.
Yeah, for sure.
If the best contract he can get is in the same ballpark of Buffalo and another team, having Adam Henry's probably a reason he would pick the Bills.
Sure.
To be like, hey, that's my guy. I'll go work with him. You add in the Von Miller piece, you add in the Stephon Diggs piece, the other things there.
Super Bowl.
Obviously a Super Bowl caliber roster and somewhere where he can, try to be the reason that we get over the top. So, I would say it's a little bit more on my radar today than it was this morning. Beforehand.
I mean, for me, it's tough because I was pretty loud on Twitter about being all the way out on Odell after seeing the video of him yelling at some old dude.
Agreed.
Because he was
turned off.
jerk about it. So I will be fine with it. The Bills land talent, I will pull back that receipt and own it. But there's still a little bit of tough there.
It wasn't a good look. No matter what. And I will be the same. I will be 100% supportive. I will cheer for him like crazy.
Yes.
I won't apologize for cheering for him.
I still think he's a jerk for how
it also was a bad look, and he was a jerk.
Yeah, totally. But the thing that was interesting to me with this coach in the past wasn't so much the free agency connection to Odell. I know that's going to be an immediate attraction. It's the managing the personality of Odell and the spotlight that comes with that, and the frustration that he's had in the past with quarterbacks that he's played with. Because I was texting you earlier, Greg, like watching all the media stuff. I'm not one that likes to buy into the emotion and the things that we don't know behind the scenes, but seeing Stephon Diggs on the sideline, frustrated with Josh, seeing the way that he talked about, hey, we got to figure this out now. Like you can see some of and I don't think that Diggs is going to be a problem or is a problem anyway. I think he's an ultimate competitor, but I do think you need somebody to manage that type of personality. And Odell is a similar. I think that a lot of what people think of Odell isn't who he is. He is an ultimate competitor. And I think that is a big part of what he's brought in to do. And so when I saw Odell and some other big names that he's coached throughout his career, that's a good thing, I think, for the Bills and Stephon Diggs and the way that he was at least talking and feeling and the angst in that room right now to get things going.
Yeah. And ultimately, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Adam Henry is some amazing wide receiver coach that's going to be the tipping point difference of this huge season. I like the fact that he's, an experienced guy. He's coached 25 years. It's all been wide receiver, and he has a lot of incredibly good production and sneaky, really good slot production at each stop that he's gone to. That has been something that has been a highly productive area under him. So, I won't lie. This will now make me do a little more research on Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. because whether either of those things happen, we now have a person in the building advocating for those people individually.
Just in the same way when Cromer arrived last year, right? We started digging through who's got connections to this system, how he wants to run things. It's important to coaches. We make fun of Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane all the time for the Carolina connection, but this is so common throughout football that you have guys that know they know how you want to get it coached up, and they can be the example. So he's going to find somebody that he's coached before to get into that room. Might as well be Odell.
Yeah. So before we get into the show tonight, there's a couple other things that happened around the league. Some news and updates that happened. A couple that were interesting. Obviously, you see every year some of the brain drain that can happen from the top teams that are out there. It sounds like Eric Bieniemy may be the finalist for the Washington Commanders offensive coordinator role to leave the Chiefs. And we saw both coordinators leave the Eagles. That we saw Jonathan Gannon go to the Cardinals with some interesting videos that came out earlier. And also Shane Steichen going to the Colts. It's hard for me to know. Howie Roseman did such a phenomenal job the last 2 years building just a ridiculous, Madden franchise level roster that I really think a lot of coaches would have looked great in those spots, but they did. They were there and they did look great. So God bless them. Good on you to go there. But I will say, I understand why people get frustrated, specifically minority coaches and minority coach advocates, when you look at some of the resumes that didn't get a chance, and then you look at, some of these guys were a coordinator for a year, 2 years, some questionable results, some stacked rosters, and they immediately get a head coaching job in their first interview cycle. It doesn't mean these guys won't be successful. They certainly could. It doesn't mean they didn't deserve the jobs. They certainly may have. I get why some people get frustrated when you see some of these guys go out and that, everybody listening right now, you tell me you knew the name Shane Steichen coming into this year, or, in that some of those names that now the first time they go out for an interview, boom, they get their chance. Of these other guys who are, Raheem Morris, who is vouched for by Mike Tomlin, has done a phenomenal job as coach both offense and defense to get himself a chance. He doesn't get anything. I get why some people are frustrated.
It's ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous that we hide around like this. There's still a majority of the media that it doesn't talk. You hear it more and more every year. People come out. Wilbon had a great piece that you're just saying with the Colts hire, like Jim Caldwell. Like you look at that resume against any of these people's resumes, and Caldwell deserves a job in the NFL. Like he brought the Lions to the playoffs. Like the dysfunctional Detroit Lions. He had the most success with them that they've had in 20 years. And it's just scoffed at and just not really talked about and not given the same type of respect that these other guys have. It's right out there in your face. It's on the nose. I don't know that it's intentional all the time, but there is a system at place that's systemic that keeps minority coaches that are deserving down below coaches that are, like you said, without the resumes, without the backing, that just continue to rise to the top, and they all have a same look and feel to them. It's not a coincidence, folks. It really isn't. Yeah. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah, the benefit of the doubt is hard not to see.
And you can say what you want about Leslie Frazier, dude, and maybe his time's passed now with some of the performances he's had, but like over the span, he's been a head defensive coordinator for what he's going into the 7th season now with the Buffalo Bills here. That's the longest tenured defensive coordinator in football, and they've been good. He has the regular season record to match up with any of the coaches that are getting hired. He's just as good as Eberflus. He's not as young, but like that hire is not much different. But Frazier won't even get the second interviews. He won't even get the same looks. It's very insulting, especially since the league is dependent on minorities to keep the league fun. Like it is primarily driven by minority, and you don't have that representation in the coaching staffs. It's kind of a slap in the face, and it's really all on the owners. Ultimately, they get to say. The Jim Irsay's of the world end up getting the say, and it's on them.
So, obviously we're going to see in this cycle, we saw 5 coaches. DeMeco Ryans did get an opportunity in Houston and was very celebrated. Looking forward to seeing what kind of staff he puts together there. And I think the reasonable leash he's going to have with having a number 1 level, number 2 overall pick at quarterback and getting some things together there. One coordinator hire I wasn't ecstatic about. Vic Fangio was made official to Miami today. I think you did some nice research to calm people a little bit, but I'm still not happy.
Well, no, I actually think the research probably shouldn't necessarily make people happy. My point was trying to show the way we talk about Fangio, because the rumors were coming that he was going to Miami and everybody started to freak out, and people wanted Fangio for the Bills. And I think he's a great coach, and maybe he would be the voice in the room for the Bills that changes just enough for what they need to do. He's a really good coach. Yeah. But I wanted to compare him to Leslie Frazier to show people that like Leslie Frazier is also on this level of defensive coordinator. That's not a good thing that a good defensive coordinator on Leslie Frazier's level that is entering our division. I don't think that's good at all. But I just wanted to put in perspective. We had Josh Poyer down there. Exactly. I wanted it to be in perspective for people where Leslie is in comparison to his peers. If we're going to talk about Fangio like that, we should probably talk about Frazier like that. And I think if he was to transition to another team, that fan base would probably be excited. Not maybe in the same way. I think Fangio has more clout than maybe he deserves.
More buzz.
There's a little bit more buzz around his name than maybe he should have credit for. But a team should be just as excited for a guy with Frazier's type of resume as well.
And I do want to give Charles makes a great point here. The fact that Lou Anarumo didn't get an opportunity after some like unbelievable game plans in the spots he was in, that's another one that's very odd, that leans towards how heavily skewed the offensive side of the ball is, having a guy that was unbelievable in the way he approached things. So we'll see where that goes. It's always, there's some cyclical nature to it, but he's a guy that I'm a little confused why he hasn't gotten more opportunities.
Yeah, and some of these guys, I think you heard
we're not in the room for the interviews. That's the one thing we don't know, how they impress
they might not.
their skills
There's also
and organizational ability on the owner.
There's some of these coaches that will turn down opportunities that just aren't the right ones. Yeah, we don't know some of that. We heard Flores was talking about it. Like he turned down Cardinals, right? Didn't he say he turned down Cardinals to go be a defensive coordinator? I thought that was on the radio today. Essentially, if it's not a good fit, I mean, you only get one shot at this for some coaches. So if you go to a place that's a bad fit, you see, this is one of the things that goes against Leslie Frazier. That Minnesota Vikings was not a good opportunity for a head coach. It was in the middle of a rebuild. They just got Christian Ponder, not a great spot. That has been a black eye on him ever since. Like you get in the wrong situation, you may never recover.
Yep. Lauren here with a great point that I don't see Fangio being in the Super Bowl shuffle video.
Add to the resume.
Well, and I will say, even not on a joking manner, that's why Leslie was so devastated he didn't get that Bears opportunity.
Oh, God.
The fact that it went to, I'm going to say kind of a milquetoast defensive mind. Like, it's not like Matt Eberflus is some dynamic personality that is just blowing the room away.
No.
And he's a good defensive scheme, but you could have had those exact same things, like a steady hand, respectable guy who's not some dynamic guy who's going to blow the room away, a good defensive mind. And he literally played on your 85 Bears greatest team ever. Like, what an easy sell that would have been to
the Bears
fan
are
base.
so dumb, though. They don't run things well. They don't. Their ownership is so bad.
Can't get out of their own way.
No. I hope my brother's watching this so you can see that he knows.
One last one before we get into the final ones here. The Bills announced that they're raising ticket prices. That's going to be very popular. A couple of things that did come out of there. They're still well below the league average.
Every time.
They're simply, this is what happens when teams are good. You get an annual increase in the ticket prices.
Even when they weren't good, it still increased slightly.
Yeah.
Like everything.
And so that wasn't interesting to me per se. I know some people will complain about it, and that's fine. The one thing that was interesting was we're now starting to build a season ticket holder waiting list that I don't know that we've had a huge waiting list in the past. And now I think I read that there were 6,000 people on the waiting list. So that's going to continue to build each year until the new stadium comes. And all the people who are ready to, I'm not going to pay these PSLs. They're not going to get my money. Don't worry. There's lots of people lined up behind you that can't wait to spend their money to do that.
Yeah. Good football has no problem selling tickets.
Correct.
Not at all.
All right.
So we have to do this, huh? We gotta go.
Yeah, this brings us to the ultimate discussion for tonight. And you had a great idea on how to approach this. We have 24 names on a list. They are the 24 pending free agents for the Buffalo Bills heading into free agency. Each of these players that we're talking about are, I'm going to say, actually, literally, possibly even today, from today through March 13th, will be in discussions with the Bills in some capacity. I will guarantee some of them re-sign between now and then. Some of them may be minimum contracts for a camp invite. Some might be a larger, more substantial offer.
There's rumors on Reddit that some of them are already done deals.
Correct. So the one on Reddit is a little bit bigger. Some of these probably do actually have a handshake deal already in place. For the smaller numbers are probably already done for all intents.
They'll be the ones that come through the facts first.
Correct. They're just like, hey, we're already ready. This is what the number is. Yeah. So you had a good idea that I've done some of my projections, and you wanted to rank them kind of in a star system of like, hey, how badly do we want them back at their market value? So not it's, oh, hey, I want Tremaine Edmunds back no matter what. Well, the price matters. Or hey, I want Taiwan Jones back no matter what. Well, the price matters. The roster spot
matters. There's a bunch of context. And that was when I was looking through this, I was like, it can't be a binary yes or no. Because some of these guys, it's like a no, but like, if the market, if they lose musical chairs or this, maybe it's just a camp invite, maybe. So you got to scale it and put it a little perspective with it. And I think it'll allow us to have the conversation a little bit more nuanced for some of them.
So I'm going to knock a couple of these out real quick.
I'll fight you on some of them.
I'm going to try my best to pick the ones I don't think you're going to fight about. I have guys like AJ Klein, Terrell Dodson, Cam Lewis, Jaquan Johnson, and Tommy Sweeney all as 0 stars for me. I don't need any of them back, but I'd also offer all of them a minimum contract camp invite. I'm fine if any of them come back.
I had Sweeney, Johnson. I have Cameron Lewis in there. Did you have him?
Yep. Cam
Okay.
Lewis. I had Dodson on that list.
Dodson's a 2-star for me.
Okay.
Klein was like a 1.2 star, 1.5 star. Like there's maybe he's right there with Van Rotten.
I do have him.
Taiwan Jones is on my 0-star. As surprising, I've pounded the table for him for years, but I agree with your notes of.
I hope that he retires. I hope that he's ready to hang him up. I would have loved to win while he was here. We're past that point of he's 35. It's past that point where he was a difference-making special teams player, and it's just he's not anymore. Now there's other guys who can do what he does, and we could use that for a developmental spot or simply a longer-term special teams contributor if that's the case.
Yeah.
All right.
Kate Keenum was another one that I honestly don't care what the name of that guy is. Bringing another backup. Agreed
100%. That's a name that I want. Keenum will be fine. If Keenum's that guy, it's fine. If the rumors about the Steelers cutting Mitch Trubisky are accurate, I'd welcome back Mitch. If it's Sam Darnold, if it's Kyle Allen, if it's Taylor Heineke, we're going to have
that guy is. Yeah.
We're going to have a guy who's going to be in the quarterback room who's not Josh Allen, and none of them are going to be Josh Allen. And if Josh Allen misses any extended period of time, they're going to be not Josh Allen on the football field. So I'd rather not waste a bunch of money on that kind of position. I guess I can convince myself that maybe I'd prefer a Heineke or a Trubisky because I've seen them be scrappy,
at least athletically,
gamey and athletic on a field, but I don't particularly care.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had Dodson a touch higher. How about where were you on like Kumaro or Marlowe?
So on Kumaro and Marlowe, Kumaro I'm on 3-star on. I think we talked about that in the Cover One DMs a little bit today about how that special teams role plays out. I'm a little bit higher on Kumaro as an actual wide receiver option if given the opportunity. I have a hot take, and I think I've said it on here, and I've said it to you before, that I think if he and Isaiah Hodgins both went to New York at the same time, we're able to compete for that spot where more targets were available. I think he probably wins out that spot over Hodgins. I do think he's a fine wide receiver, especially for that low end. You brought up a good point. If you don't keep some of these special teams guys elsewhere, maybe it's 7 receivers instead of 6, and you are able to have that flexibility with a Kumaro. So I'd like the path for him. I like that player. I like the special teams role with the ability to play some boundary wide receiver. I like it. I want to keep him. So he's 3.5. Dean Marlowe's a 3, or he's a 3. Dean Marlowe for me was a 3.5 because of the unknown at safety position right now. And not having a lot of money, it's kind of something I'm targeting in the draft and free agency, but it sort of falls in priority. And the unknown of Hamlin, how's Benford going to transition? How's that going to look? Because of that, it's a priority to at least get that body in throughout camp, throughout the preseason, until I know I can get some more answers on this position.
So the last part of your answer there interests me. I don't know how interested I am in Dean Marlowe making the 53-man roster. I'm very interested in him making the 90-man roster. I want him in camp. I want him there. I want him as a voice in that room. I kind of hope we draft or sign a guy who beats him out for that, whatever it might be, 3rd or 4th safety spot. I kind of hope he's not able to make the roster, but I'd like him to be an option
Some
to
insurance.
be there as a veteran practice squad option or as the 4th safety that's there.
Insurance if Benford's thing takes longer, that transition,
or that it doesn't go well and he has to go back to corner because he was a good corner. I just a quick comment on Kumaro. When again, most of our best discussion goes on in our staff chat for Cover One. I'm not overboard in that. We shouldn't need any special teams players. Of course we do. We need special teams specialists. Every roster has a Matthew Slater and has a guy who is that role. In my opinion, the Bills had 4 of those last year where there wasn't a ton of offensive or defensive production or value. Specifically with Taiwan Jones, there was none. Matakevich, there was none. And then you have guys like Sarandio and Kumaro where there was a little, but Jay actually didn't want them to play.
Right.
Saran Neal showed, we've tried multiple times. He's shown he's not a dependable, consistent defender. Kumaro, I'll give you your comment is accurate. He is a functional wide receiver. If we have injuries in a game, I'd rather him be out there than Taiwan Jones be out there running back.
Yeah.
But I don't actually want Jake Kumaro playing in a game that matters.
Sure.
So I wouldn't mind dialing that back from 4 like only special teams contributors to 2 or 3. Now, if Taiwan Jones is ready to step away and Jake Kumaro becomes that guy, and it's Jake Kumaro on one side and Saran Neal on the other as the gunners, and we probably even still have a linebacker. We'll talk about Medikevich in a minute if it's him. That's.
Well, I think you drafted the guys. Now you can move on. Right?
I agree. I think that's accurate. I'm fine with that because now we don't have the fake 4th running back on the roster. We could now have 3 running backs and 7 receivers, and it's still 10 together between those 2 position groups. So I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm okay with it. I'm not going to advocate for, Jake Kumaro, but it's fine where it is. Let's touch on Medikevich next. What do you think on Tyler Medikevich?
I had it at like same with AJ Klein. I had them both at that 1.5 of, and where I'm at 1.5 is like come in for camp. And if the rookies haven't gotten you to the point where you have enough faith in them to be your special teams guy, then sure, we can have that conversation as the roster whittles down. But hopefully it's you have them in for camp just for reps. If they have a chance to catch on, you let them go. Otherwise, you're just having them there for the reps and hoping that your rookies really take that role. Or not rookies anymore. The picks that you've made at the linebacker position that are primary special teams guys, they need to step into that role.
Yeah, so ideally, we kept, the reason that Bale Inspector stayed on the roster as a game day inactive all year was because he's supposed to be Tyler Medikevich's replacement this year. I would like for that to be the case.
Yeah.
Now, for Tyler Medikevich, I also am not ready to kick him to the curb, but I'm only offering him a minimum contract. He's no longer you are such a good special teams player that you get a premium contract. If someone else wants to offer him that, God bless him. Go get that money.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to offer him $2.5 million to be a core special teams guy, go get it. I am willing to offer him. I'll even play around with that veteran incentive thing where he counts as a minimum contract, but you can give him a little extra cash and it ends up being 1.25 or 1.5 million, but he counts as a minimum contract. If he comes in and competes and makes the roster, because Bale Inspector can't actually replace him. It's easy for us to say Bale Inspector should replace him as a special teams player.
What about Bernard here too?
I'm going to assume Bernard's capable of more than that as a 3rd round pick, but yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Like that might be the one that has to replace
for sure.
And then Spectre replaces Bernard. Like you move them slowly.
Yes,
up.
one notch up to each. But either way, if for some reason they are not able to do that, and we're not going to cut Bernard. You're not going to cut a 3rd round pick the second season, but you absolutely can cut Bale Inspector. Like a 6th round pick is nothing to cut the second year. So in my opinion, you would invite Medikevich back, and if he beats out Spectre for the job, you get the money. If you don't, we wish you all the best. See you later.
Inspector you might be able to get a guy like that back on the practice squad. Yes. Like I know he's thought you
might be able to get Medikevich back on the practice squad.
Honestly,
all right, so we've skipped around a couple here.
I got a guy down by here on your list that has not been mentioned yet.
Correct. I've intentionally kept him off. Okay. You mentioned Van Roten. Van Roten I had he was like a 1.2.
That's where I'm at. For me. Yeah.
He's welcome to come back if he makes it as the 8th or 9th guy. God bless him, but I don't care.
I am interested in as many large,
fat,
I want 15
guys
go
through
compete
camp, for spots.
Have at it at camp. Get something that works.
I'll honestly say I'm probably the same for David Quessenberry. I don't know that I saw anything this year that made me say, I need him back. Like I welcome him back. I would sign him to another deal. Last year he made 1.75 million. I'd probably do that again. But honestly, if we just want to roll the dice on Tommy Doyle being healthy enough to play or some other interchangeable swing tackle guy, I don't know that Quessenberry showed me anything this year where I was like, we got to have that guy back.
No, it wasn't a gotta have him back. I had him at like a 2.4, little bit more than a Van Roten of just, hey, this is guy that
I'd take him over Van Roten if the contracts were equal, but even a minimum contract versus an extra $1 million, I might say, okay. I'll take that.
That's fair. It's familiarity a little bit for me of a rotational guy. There's going to be another guy on here that I probably have a little bit higher than you. Same kind of idea. It's veteran presence. I think it's hard.
Are you going to say nice things about Roger Saffold?
I don't have anything nice to say about him, but I'm at a point of allow these guys to come into camp and see how the dust settles. And in the NFL, I think you got to get the best depth that you can at the line. You want to be top heavy, but it's going to rotate. Guys are going to get hurt, and there's not a lot of it out there in the world. If you can find some depth, grab a hold of it. But so I'll let those guys.
I'll let you read the fans what my note was on Roger Saffold.
That I will give. Hold on, I gotta enlarge it here. I will give the Bills money not to sign him.
Yeah, I will pay money.
His own cash.
I will send the Bills some of my money for them not to sign.
I can let him come into camp, and if he wins that rotational interior offensive line job, there's worse spots in the league of those guys. That's kind of where I'm at. I don't want it.
I'll let you know. So Roy is waiting for it. Roger Saffold, Quessenberry, Van Roten, that they've fallen far enough that I actually have Bobby Hart slightly rated.
I have a 3 on Hart.
I made it very, very clear how much I did not want that man on our roster. He won me over. Like, he was a functional player. He actually did decent as the jumbo 6th offensive lineman. He actually looked okay in the small stretches he had to play guard. He's not a tackle. He is not a tackle in the NFL, but he's actually a semi-functional backup guard, and he did okay in that jumbo set spot. I don't want to pay that money, but if he's minimum up to 1.25 ballpark, we paid him 1.27 last year, I'll give him that money again.
I'll keep him. I got him at 3. I'm down for it. I've both Cole Beasley and Jameson Crowder are lower for me than Bobby Hart. I have them both at 1.5s.
Okay.
Flip a coin for either one of those guys.
So I made a comment earlier in the staff chat. I have one roster spot for Isaiah McKenzie, Cole Beasley, or Jamison Crowder. There's one roster spot available for those guys because I want a draft pick in that area. I want another value signing at wide receiver, and then we can bring back one. But that's it. So I want them to pick whether it's Cole Beasley, whether it's Isaiah McKenzie, whether it's Jamison Crowder. I'm good with one of those guys. And I'm talking more 53-man roster. I guess I won't throw a fit if 2 of them are back on the 90. But I won't care if none of them are. I won't lose a moment of sleep if all 3 of them are gone. My guess is that it's Cole Beasley, actually.
That is back.
Yeah.
I think there's a good chance
Crowder's gone.
I think there's a good chance Beasley's back. I don't need it to be Beasley. I don't need it to be Crowder. I agree with you on the roles. I could live with that level of free agent coming in that isn't one of those guys' names. Is Jarvis Landry. I don't think that he come in for as little as these guys, but like some aging vet that is going to be that role in case Shakir doesn't take the step that we want him to, or in case the whatever insert draft pick isn't quite ready or to come on. The Bills kind of maybe move slow with some of those guys. But I'm happy with the weapons as is. I do want that role. It doesn't need for me to be either one of those guys. I will roll with either one. I think they are who they are at this point, where Crowder probably has more upside, but then you don't know if you're actually going to get to see him, where Beasley probably is more reliable, but has legitimately lost a full step from 2020, 2021 season.
Yeah. So, and just a trigger that'll come up. We're not talking about guys on the roster here today. We will be doing our salary cap spectacular coming up. Some more detail on this, but a trigger for Isaiah McKenzie. There is a $250,000 roster bonus on the first day of the league year on March 17th. So we're going to know beforehand if he gets past that, he's going to go to camp and you have to make the roster. But that to me is the trigger where you would do it. And they actually, if they were to release him, it's not nothing. They saved $2.6 million. Yeah. $2.6 million is like a legit, with how tight we are up against things. I will honestly be surprised.
I'd rather keep Bobby Hart.
Yeah. You're not wrong.
I'm not even kidding.
Yeah. That's
not a take. I'm not even trying to take you here.
So I saved a name at the bottom here who I'm I'm going to kind of talk out of both sides of my mouth. I have him rated pretty highly, and I also don't want to give him any money. It's Dane Jackson. So Dane Jackson is a restricted free agent.
Yeah.
I don't want to give him the RFA tender because the RFA tenders are too much. They're like 2.1 and 2.6 and 2.9 million. I don't have any interest in giving him that. So I do not want to tender him. But I also don't mind bringing him back on the roster because he's one of those guys where I don't really want him to play, but the things where people are, oh, it can't be worse. Oh, it can be way worse. Like there are guys who are street free agents who get teams roasted where at least Dane Jackson can be in position. We know there's struggles with making plays on the ball. We know he's not a consistent starting caliber player. But now when you have Kyer Elam developing and stepping up, you have Christian Benford coming back healthy. We potentially, you already have Tre'Davious White and Taron Johnson. When we're talking about Dane Jackson coming back to be cornerback 5 and just being the first depth guy on the outside, that's value. And I don't want to pay it money. But if you tell me that we got him back for 2 years of $3 million and it was $1.5 million a year, or we did this with Levi Wallace the first year. He was an RFA. People freaked out for a day because we did not tender him. And then all of a sudden he was re-signed like the next day for a minimum deal. I'm expecting something like that. I'm expecting us not to tender Dane Jackson, but then to pretty quickly re-sign him and bring him back to the team.
I hope so. I think the role is super important. I think the unknown of Christian Benford and how that's going to play out. Like there's a scenario where I think the most realistic scenario for Benford is he plays out to be the next Cam Lewis, where he's a developmental safety that can play cornerback in a pinch, and he's kind of a versatile guy. But there's a scenario here where they have to depend on a Benford to come in and maybe be a starter at the safety position. We really don't know how it's going to play out. And if that's the case, cornerback 2B or your backup cornerback becomes much more of a need. And you got a guy that's got a lot of reps in this defense. He knows what he's supposed to do. He communicates with your players. I don't want to reset that backup position. We've seen this team have to go to the likes of Daryl Worley at one point. I don't know if Bills fans remember what it looked like when Daryl Worley had to play football for the Buffalo Bills, but it gets really bad really fast in the NFL. To your point, like these guys come in and get burnt. I don't want to be in that situation. So unless something else dramatically changes and how they stock up that room somehow, Dane Jackson I have him as a 4.
There's certainly a chance a draft pick could beat him out. There's a chance that a veteran signing could beat him out. But I think it's more likely than not that he's our primary backup as
I would have loved to have had corner. A Levi Wallace still backed up in our system a year ago, right? Like those guys, whether fans want them or not, or whether they should be out there as cornerback 1s, which Dane Jackson had to do, that's not fair. But as a rotational guy, absolutely valuable to a team like this.
Yeah. And, we certainly expect year 2 Kyer Elam for the way he ended the year to be very clear as a starter. Tre'Davious White, a full now year and a half off of the injury to be fully healthy. I think that's our top 3 corners of Tre'Davious White, Kyer Elam, and Taron Johnson are pretty locked in. But then beyond there, we don't know where Christian Benford is, and you still need a primary backup to come in some places. And I think it's fine for Dane Jackson to be that guy. I actually think it's a decent luxury for Dane Jackson to be that guy.
Yeah.
A couple other smaller ones before we get to the handful of bigger names we have here. Ike Bacher is a reasonable priority for me. He's a guy that they obviously like. They kept him around through a scary Achilles injury. Now we're going to be a full year off of him. I like the idea of him being a primary backup. I don't like the idea of him being a starter, but I like him being a backup, and I think he's a guy that can start for a stretch of games. So I have him rated a little bit higher. I don't want a lot of money, but I won't go crazy if it's $2 million. I won't lose sleep.
I have him. It's a little slightly over 4. It's like a 4.2 for me for Ike Bacher here. This is a guy that I like. When he did get his chance to play, I liked what we saw. Suffered the Achilles injury. I like the story. I'm fine with him being a rotational guy. I would actually be interested in him competing for that starting job, like bring in other people, but I want to see him get a full summer healthy, going out and competing for that job. Cause I think he's either going to push a young guy that you bring in. Like he's not going to give up on that job. He's going to want to get at it. So that's a good thing to push a young guy, or he is going to take that job. And I think that the team played pretty well when he was in there. Like, I don't know if they got something untapped there but you've made an investment in him to keep him around, allow him to rehab this injury. And I think that you got to at least see that part of the investment through and see if he can be at worst that rotational interior lineman for you. And at best, maybe he can be a starter or a patch starter until a rookie works his way in or something.
Yeah, I like it. Comments here from John. We appreciate you saying great show. Love the the Senior Bowl content. We appreciate that. His 2 cents, the Bills need 2 offensive linemen and another true playmaker. There's a chance that Gabe or Dawson Knox could grow into that. Maybe James Cook too. But they need another problem that other DCs have to plan for. I think he's spot on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's they definitely need to add to it. I was interested. Yeah. Josh made a comment about teams have to mimic what KC does. And I just think about the guys we got in our building. You can do it. We can do this. Tell Dorsey.
I agree. So some of the next pieces here, there's a couple other smaller ones. Shaq Lawson is someone for me that I had pretty low expectations coming into the year.
Right.
And I think he pretty clearly passed Boogie Basham. And I think you can make the argument that he at minimum pulled even with AJ Epinesa, if not past him in overall value. I'd like to have Shaq Lawson back. I would. I'd like to have Shaq Lawson back, and I'm fine if that even means at the point of missing one of Epinesa or Basham, if that is the way it turns out. Although honestly, we probably need those 4 guys, short of another signing or draft pick, because Von Miller likely won't be ready week 1. He's going to say, for anyone listening, Von Miller is going to tell us between now and week 1 a dozen times that he's going to play week 1, because Von Miller likes to say things. We're not going to know that until it's actually week 1.
Yeah, this is the outside of the safety position. We talked about it. This is one of my I don't know what that position is going to look like without Von Miller and how long you're going to have to get through that position without Von Miller.
The last time he did this, he was back in 9 months. He was ready to play week 1. He has legitimately done it before.
Sure.
He got injured later the time he did it and was back for week 1 and did it in 9 months and played.
He's older.
He is now older and it's different, but he has done it. So I'll give him that.
I am going to err on the side of caution and conservatism with my estimations and how I think it's going to happen. And if he surprises me, I'm going to be real happy about it. But I think the Bills have to probably plan for an extended period of time, that full year length, maybe without Von Miller. And I don't know what that looks like. It kind of scares me. I think at worst, you have to bring back the 4. Like you said, you have to have keep what you at least had. So I think for me, Lawson's a 4 of getting him back in here. And I wouldn't be mad if they found a way to maybe upgrade with somebody a little bit bendier. And maybe it's not Lawson that gets upgraded. Maybe you're right. It's moving on from one of those rookies. But I do think they need to find a bit of a bendier pass rusher till Von Miller gets back. And I don't know if you can find that guy in free agency. I haven't gotten that deep yet. But until further notice, Shaq's a priority for me.
Yep. And, I made the comment that, to me, Shaq Lawson, AJ Epinesa, and Boogie Basham are all DN4s or lower. Heck, I think Jonathan Kingsley is in that running. They're all DN4s, which means we have a DN1 and a DN2 and no DN3. We don't have that primary rotation guy who I think in a perfect scenario, Gregory Rousseau should be a guy who plays 60% of snaps, but they're all first and second down and some short yardage stuff. But I actually wouldn't mind a bendy guy coming in opposite Von Miller for the 3rd and 9s. I'd actually be okay if that's some of the ones that Russo
and then throw
rotates out
inside
from. Or kick him into D tackle, instead of a one tech. So we have options to do there, but I hope that we see that, and I hope we're not overly patient with Epinesa and Basham. I'm going to be ready to move on if we need to there, and I won't be shocked if we see. We've seen it with Cody Ford. We've seen it with Zay Jones. We've seen other picks. They give him the chance, and then they trade him and move him on. I won't be shocked if we see one or both of those guys traded.
Bring Jerry back. 1 year.
Oh, God, please. I was trying to say it last year. We could have used Epinesa to move up in the draft and just give his money, re-sign Jerry Hughes, and everyone would have been happier. Everything would have been better.
There would have been a bunch of not happy people, but I would have.
That's fine. I wouldn't have cared about them. One more small one before we finish with our big 4 here. Sam Martin, he's a punter. I don't particularly care about punters, but he was decent and he was fine. He's good at his job. I'm fine if they bring him back. I also won't lose my mind if they go a different route and try the draft again, an undrafted free agent, another veteran. I think he did perfectly fine. He's a good holder. He's a good directional punter. He was fine. You can bring him back. I don't want to pay him a bunch of money because I don't want to pay any punter money. But if he's the guy we don't pay a lot of money to punt, that's fine.
So he's a 4 for me. He's actually higher than some of the remaining guys we have to talk about. For me, all the things you said, that's all I want, Greg, in a punter. I just want somebody that we don't have to talk about, does their job. We really don't have to think about. And that was San Martin for me this year. And that it's been a while here since we've been covering the team where I just haven't had to come on here and talk about shanks and talk about bad holding or some problem with the punter. Maintain that. I don't want to pay it a lot, but just keep a guy that I don't have to talk about.
All right, so we've got our big 4 left here. Let's start with Jordan Phillips.
Yeah.
Jordan Phillips in the first 6-7 weeks of the season was the impactful, penetrating monster of a human that he is, because you have someone who's 6'4", 6'5", 330 and moves the way he does.
Mm-hmm.
He is an explosive problem for defense, for other offenses. Then he tore his labrum and he gutted through it for like 2/3 of the season. And he clearly wasn't himself. He missed some games at the end of the year. When he was in there, you could tell he was playing one-handed, didn't have the same violence with his hands, wasn't able to do the same things. He is 31. I have him as a 3 because of the mix of talent and wanting him back versus what I'm a little nervous it'll cost. If he thinks he needs $5 million again, I'm probably out. If they can get him a little more reasonable, I do think when healthy, he is a rotation caliber defensive tackle. I'm nervous about, is he going to be able to stay healthy, or was that just a blip and that won't be a big deal? Some of those years in Arizona, he missed a bunch of games too, and I'm nervous it's a trend.
I don't necessarily think guys trend in injuries, although there's examples of it. If he heals up, he's definitely an impact player. My problem with the value for him is I actually think that they need probably a rotational 1 tech here at some point that can be a younger guy that can spill more that 1 tech role, because we saw what happened when Jones was out.
Yes.
Granted, Phillips is playing with 1 arm. Maybe he can take on more of that, but he really is more of a penetrating type player. I think you have a couple of those guys. So it would have to be a decision. You've already paid Tim Settle. He's there. I think there's a little bit of redundancy. Maybe it's keeping Phillips in a trade for Oliver. We've heard about maybe there's some trade market for Ed Oliver.
For anyone who's wondering, next week at the salary cap extravaganza, that topic is going to come up.
I mean, it's not something I'm particularly interested in, but there's some moving parts at this position where I think you probably have 3 guys with one that here is possible in the market. That
as of right now, Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, and Tim Settle will be on the team. I think it's unlikely we see a trade, but it's possible.
But you have those 3 now, and I think that there's this idea, right? Jordan Phillips, you can get him back at the player he was. Yes, that'd be great to have back. But I think in terms of what I like to see them get, I think more of a rotation where it's Settle and Oliver rotating out into Jones and insert 1 tech B to start to take that load off of Jones, where if something happens to him, the defense isn't totally lost on the interior. I think that would make more sense than having 3 penetrating guys, but I would be happy to bring him back if that scenario wasn't to work out.
Yeah. So, and again, there's a lot of comments in the chat about different moves and different things with the trades. We'll get into how guaranteed salaries work, what goes within the trade, what's going to be dead cap, how we can save money. That is what the salary cap extravaganza is. We'll get into all that fun next week and explain lots of things around there. I agree. I think there's going to be some tough decisions and some areas where we have to find some savings. Mm-hmm. I think drafting a developmental 1 tech who can play some snaps with bringing back an Eli Ankow kind of guy is probably smarter than paying $5 million to Jordan Phillips when we could use that money elsewhere. And I think that, short of them knowing that they want to trade at Oliver and that we need Phillips to be the penetrating 3 tech, and all of a sudden trading Oliver frees up $10 million because guaranteed salary goes with in a trade. There's no dead cap if we trade at Oliver. That would intrigue me more, but I don't think we can keep Ed Oliver and pay Jordan Phillips. And for that reason,
Settle's going to have to step up.
Yeah, we need more from him. Yeah, right.
You got to get more from him.
And Settle's relatively cheap to be able to do that, but still something that's there.
Yeah.
All right, we're into our big 3. Everybody knows the big 3. What are your thoughts on running back Devin Singletary?
Honestly, I love Devin. I love everything he's done for us. I picked him to be on the graphic here to head the show tonight. It's a 2.5 for me. This is really whoever loses running back market. I'd be happy to bring Devin back if he's the guy that loses the market. I think the familiarity's there. I do think he can just do his job. I'm time for James Cook and Nyheim Hines though. Like whoever comes into this room, that would be probably the hard part for Devin is coming back to the room and taking a step back, because whoever comes into this room, I would like them to take a step back. Two guys that are more explosive that I'd like to see find ways into this offense. So I'm not interested in anything that takes those guys off the field or snaps away from them, but I do want a reliable running back 3 that can be a real running back, isn't a special teams guy, that can get involved in the offense and be someone you lean on when needed. You know you're going to have injuries pop up. But I don't want to play this game anymore where we're not sure if Devin's running back 1 or who's going to get the touches. I'm ready for James Cook to get the touches and Nyheim Hines to be a real big part of this offense.
Yep. And for that reason, I am out. Yeah, that's my approach as well. Like in a vacuum, and would I be happy to bring Devin Singletary back on a cheap contract? Of course. He is an NFL caliber running back who deserves to play in the NFL, who deserves to get touches. I just don't want those touches to be in Buffalo. I don't. I want him to go somewhere where he has a chance to play. Here, Roy's saying the same thing. I want Singletary to go to a team that will use him more. He deserves that. I'd be happy for him to go there. I want the backfield to be James Cook, Nyheim Hines, and whatever, whoever. Honestly, the guy with the biggest size speed score, that you have weight and 40 time, who's available in the 5th round. So Muhammad Ibrahim from Minnesota, some big this year's Dameon Pierce guy. Give me a hard running guy in the day 3 who can, be there alongside, get some of that short yardage work. Because I don't think either Hines or Cook are short yardage guys. I don't want all of that to fall on Josh. Find me a guy who's
you got Gilliam,
a big thump. Yeah, sure. Maybe it's Gilliam. A big thumper type guy who doesn't even need to be game day active every week. I'm fine with our game day active running back room to be James Cook, Nyheim Hines, and Reggie Gilliam, and go forward.
And not Taiwan
perfectly
Jones.
Fine. Not Taiwan Jones.
Okay.
And a draft pick who's a big thumper that in games where we're playing the Texans or the Bears or whatever, and we know we might need a 4th quarter, 4-minute offense guy, that's fine. But yeah, I want Cook, Hines on, we'll talk about him next week. Hines on a restructured, reduced contract. We're probably not going to pay him his full contract either. We'll restructure him. And that's good. I'm good with that. That's the way a cheap, modern NFL running back room should be built.
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Jordan Poyer.
I'm going to go. You've been asking me first.
Okay.
All along. You get Poyer first.
So Poyer's obviously difficult. We love him. He's been the heart and soul of this team. He's been the most consistent part of this franchise since Sean McDermott came aboard. He's been the most reliable piece. We don't even really know what a defense without Jordan Poyer looks like to do, because he's been here so consistently here. He also plays with reckless abandon. He just throws caution to the wind with his body, and we've seen that add up. He's 32. I think he deserves a 2-year, $25 million deal, and I think he's going to get it from Atlanta or Jacksonville or Chicago or Houston or a team like that could use his veteran leadership in a locker room and has the money
and got to sell their fan base all pro.
And I'm going to explain the difference here, where Tremaine Edmunds can be more expensive than Jordan Poyer, but it's way easier to make a first-year cap hit really low
on a 6-year, 7-year
long-term deal, a 6-year, 7-year deal. We're not giving that to Jordan Poyer. Jordan Poyer is going to get a 2-year deal with very minimal guarantees, which means you can't spread it out. You can't hide the money.
It's probably a 2-year deal where you really only do one.
You really only want it to be one. So there is a scenario where he goes out into the marketplace, does not get the offers he's looking for, and since it's going to be a low deal, he might as well come back and take the low deal in Buffalo. There is a path for that where it's, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's going to sign for $7.5 million or $8 million. And if he's going to do that, well, screw it. You might as well come back here to Buffalo and do it. I don't see that being the most likely scenario. I think one of those teams, the Chicago, heck, there's a fair amount of cap space and some 2 safeties who are free agents in Cincinnati. Maybe he goes there. Jacksonville, Houston, multiple spots where he could go. Hey, there's a GM and a head coach down in East Rutherford who are very familiar with him and have a bunch of cap space and need some leadership on the defense. I think Jordan Poyer gets that money somewhere else, and I'm excited for him to get that money. He deserves one more big paycheck. He's been just an absolute warrior for the Bills. My heart wants him here. My brain can't explain why he's going to end up being here.
For rating, I had him at a 3.5. Most of it's because I just don't think the market's going to work out in the Bills' favor for all the reasons you mentioned. We don't have to get into the possible ways that it can work out and the ways that it won't. This is a super tough one for me, and it's even added a worse situation by the DeMar Hamlin situation months ago before this happened, the terrible situation with DeMar. I felt a lot better about moving on from Jordan Poyer, not because I wouldn't miss him and I don't want him on this team, but I like the way DeMar was playing. I thought that
he was better in that role if you had a center fielder like Hyde next to him.
Yeah, I think he would have been playing better if he had consistently had Jordan Poyer with him healthy all year long. Like if they were starting to click, there was a lot of good film that they put out there. That has that interchangeability. He is kind of, since he's been drafted, Eric and I would talk like he's kind of a poor man's Poyer. Like it seemed like a natural progression. Now I'm super unknown, Greg. I don't know if that is ever gonna reap again. So like,
obviously we know the doctor made the comments that he's the doctor, I think incorrectly said, I guarantee that DeMar Hamlin plays pro football again. He can't do that because it's DeMar Hamlin's choice.
Correct.
I will say, I do think it is DeMar's choice of if he wants to. I don't think there's like some additional medical hurdle that has to be cleared. I think that he's allowed to play, but can you imagine the anxiety of waiting to make that first big hit after what you experienced?
I think there's a lot.
I won't judge him if he decides, hey, I'm good, guys. I'm going to go take this chunk of money that was donated and go devote my life to helping others and doing that. And I wish you all the best.
Yeah, we don't know how it's going to play out. And that just total unknown for me is really a lot harder than it was months ago, where I felt this position, the future of the position felt pretty good for me. And now I'm relying on maybe the development of Christian Benford to safety, or we're talking about bringing back a Dean Marlowe. So the needs there, where if the value falls, I'm going to run an offer to Jordan Poyer myself to get him back, because it answers a lot of questions for you, at least for a year. But until I know more about the safety position, it will linger over my head like that. And it's a shame that the NFL is a business. And to your point, I want it for Jordan to get exactly the amount of money he deserves.
Yeah. All right. Our final one is the most difficult one on the board. It is Tremaine Edmunds. I have gone at length in our staff chat in the Slack channel. So premium members, you have already know what I'm going to say here. He is a conundrum. There are so many differing sides of this. On one side, he is the exact reason that Brandon Beane talks about draft, develop, and re-sign your own guys. He was the young, super traitsy, high ceiling prospect that you drafted and watched him to get better every year. And now you're in that time where like, oh, we've watched him develop. We should now benefit from that scenario. Also, he plays a traditionally non-premium position. It's maybe a little more important in the Bills scheme, but traditionally linebacker is not on that same tier as tackle and defensive end and quarterback and those kind of things. And you're already paying a linebacker $10 million. So now you're talking about, are we going to dedicate $25, $30 million a year to linebacker? Also, you can structure a deal with his age if you stretch it out, where I can make, I think he's going to be about $17.5 million, but even if it's $20 million a year and 6 years, $120 million, I can make that look like $7 million in the first year for the cap hit. Well, to replace him with, we put out posts on Leighton Vander Esch and Anthony Walker and Deion Jones and Drew Tranquill and guys like that. That's about what they're going to cost. You're not going to save a ton of money if you go the veteran free agent route. If you don't go the veteran free agent route, all of a sudden, everybody has wide receiver and offensive line at the top of the draft board. Well, if you don't sign someone at a $5 to $8, maybe $10 million level at middle linebacker, Well, now you have to take one in the first 2 rounds because you left yourself a huge hole. So all of these countering points back and forth, I don't know the answer, but I know this is a huge divergent fork in the road for our offseason and somewhat for our franchise, that if we re-sign him, it's going to take a ton of cap gymnastics. We're going to have to create a very creative deal. I already put one out there where I can make it $17.5 million and pay him $7 million cap hit in the first year. I can make it 6 years and $120 million, which Aaron joked earlier. That's the rumor that's on Reddit, is his uncle was at a game and told people that's already agreed to. I can make that look like $7 million in the first year. Von Miller last year signed a 6-year, $120 million deal. His first year cap hit was $5 million. They can do that. A guy as young as Tremaine Edmunds makes it easier to do that. I just don't know if they should. I think offensive line is a bigger need. I think wide receiver is a bigger need. And a piece of me in my gut says, I want to pull Tre'Davious White and Matt Milano and Von Miller and Micah Hyde and Gregory Rousseau into a room and say, hey, guess what, guys? Together, we're paying you $60 million. I need you to figure it out. You're going to have a 1-year Band-Aid at middle linebacker. You're going to have a draft pick. I need you to figure it out and make up for it because I need to go spend money in the other room. I need you guys to figure this out. I'm paying you a bunch of money. Help me make it work.
I am not even conflicted at all about this. I have no arguments internally. I got him at 5. It was the easiest decision for me in this free agent process. I think that you can get these numbers to where I'm happy with them. I think half the fan base, especially probably 75% of the fan base that's on Twitter, won't be happy with the contract that he gets. And it's going to make it harder. To Chris's point, Chris put in here in the chat that even if we re-sign him, the Edmunds haters will be even more insufferable. The amount of money that he's going to get is going to make it way
now
worse.
Instead of hating him as a first round pick, they're going to hate him as a $17.5 million linebacker.
I don't even care. I think the level of player that I believe that he is, and I believe that they're going to be paying him to be throughout the next 10 years of his career, possibly, just going in at the age of 25 here. That level of player, I don't think you're going to find in free agent. I don't think you're going to get any type of similar value. That contract will look good in years to come. The cap's only going up. I'm not super worried about it. Brandon Beane is very good at the same type of thing you are and making these gymnastics moves. I think he'll be able to do it. To me, it's a priority. He does check all those boxes, exactly what you said. He came in with Allen. These are franchise-altering guys. He's too key to your defense. I actually think it will be easier. People don't want to hear this because Matt Milano just had an all-pro fantastic year. Do think it's going to be easier to replace that position than it will be to replace Matt Milano in a couple of years when that deal starts to come up and become a problem. And so I don't know, man, I'm all in on him. I think that it's a must have to do. I'm actually a little mad that it didn't get done, but it makes sense for Tremaine's side to not get anything done here and at least see offers.
I will say my assumption is Brandon Beane agrees more with you than he does with me.
The only thing that keeps me pause is the scenario you lay out is where there's just a team out there that just wants him more than us, and they can go do it. And that's where it's like, there's a point for me that is a fork in the road of we can't do that. We can't get generationally wealthy. Congratulations.
Yeah. And it's, if the number is $20 million a year and they want to pay him the same as Roquan, and more than Fred Warner, and more than Shaq Leonard, and more than CJ Mosley, and they're going to pay him as much as Roquan Smith, and it's just, hey, we're going to offer him $20 million a year with a huge 3 years of it, $60 million of it guaranteed. I don't know. I don't know.
I will become conflicted there. But I think Brandon will be able to work a contract that gives him the value and gives his agent the, hey, look where we are, ticker tape look, but in a couple of years, fans are going to be pissed about it. It won't be that bad.
Yeah. So I am genuinely at a coin flip. I think we are at a 50-50 crossroads of there are so many reasons to sign him. There are so many reasons that you retain this valuable defensive captain, multiple Pro Bowl, received all pro votes this year. We joke about the age all the time, but he's just 24. He's 24 years old. Like, that's the kind of guy You're supposed to. He's going to be turning 25 this season. That's the kind of guy you're supposed to keep. But there is a number where it makes sense, where it doesn't make sense. And my issue is it's either you're in at a market value deal and you figure out a way to make it work, or you're out because your valuation is 14 million and you know it's not going to be 14 million. It's going to be way more than that. And that since that's our offer, we're just going to, wish you all the best and let you go. Because we know we can't do that. And that's not where our value is. And then, we'll get into, does that mean Milano switches to middle linebacker and Bernard plays, or Milano switches to middle linebacker and you sign a cheaper weak side linebacker? Because it is easier to find weak side linebackers. We said it all the time on the show. Milano is better at his job than Edmunds is, but Edmunds' job is way harder than Milano's job. So there's a reason he looks better, because when you get to just kind of freelance and see ball, get ball, it's easier to play weak side linebacker. Middle linebacker, you have to do all the stuff and all the coverage in the middle and everything that's there. That also means it's harder to replace him. So I know Eric's talked about it a little bit of whether Milano could do that, whether he would take over the green dot and become the play caller if this were to happen. I think those are all things we could get into. But he's one that I think we're going to find out pretty quickly, because he's the kind of guy that if he makes it to free agency, he's going to get a deal in those first 48 hours. Like, that is one of those huge deals that either we're announcing, because we took Milano right up to the deadline last time and we thought we were going to lose him, and all of a sudden we brought him back at the 11th hour. I think it's going to come down to that. I think we're either going to find out that we re-sign him on like Sunday, March 12th, or it's going to be, on he's out there, and if he makes it, I have a feeling that Joe Shane and Brian Dable are going to steal him for $120 million.
If he's out there, I think there'll be teams bidding for the services, and the hole that leaves in conjunction with the hole that we just talked about, Jordan Poyer leaving. Like, we talked about those injuries this last year.
And if we trade that Oliver all the way right up the middle,
just right up the middle,
the entire center of the defense, we just swapped out all of them.
Yeah, and I get what some people are saying of, okay, then go all in on offense and more gas.
Real quick, let me answer Claude's question. We can. The issue is guys like Joey Bosa and Nick Bosa and Khalil Mack, their contracts count as linebackers. Matt Judon. So to franchise tag him counts $20.9 million in 2023. So even if we wanted to give him a $20 million a year deal, I can massage that and make it look like a $7 million hit in 2023 because that's all we can afford. If we franchise tag him, we have to cut enough people and restructure enough to give him the $20 million right now.
Yeah. And
we can't even do that to survive the first. So I don't want to say we literally can't. I could come up with enough restructures and moves to technically do it. It would be absolutely crippling.
And it would be better off for him to give that 7-year deal that you. Yeah, no, the 7-year deal you're talking about makes more sense than he doesn't want to do that. We wouldn't want to do that. I don't think either sides even want to have this.
If we keep him, we keep him because it's a long-term extension that we can massage and make fit, and we want him here forever. And
but the NFL,
like, hey, give us the tentpole big numbers, and then you make it work how you need to.
The NFL needs to just have nuance in these conversations. Same with all pro, pro ball voting. All of these things need to change where we adapt to how the game is played. Nickel cornerback doesn't get talked about enough. That should have its own all pro spot, and the franchise tag on that should probably be its own separate thing too. Like, all these things need to have nuance that matches.
Edge players should be edge players. It shouldn't matter. Look, so the Bills are doing it. Von Miller contributed to the equation of linebacker franchise tag because we listed him as a linebacker because he wanted to be number 40. And that's the only reason. He didn't play linebacker once all damn year for us, but he wanted number 40, and you're only eligible to wear number 40 if you're a linebacker. So we contributed to it. We listed Von Miller as a linebacker, even though he was an edge player every single time he played.
Yeah, but that's not the Bills' fault. That's the
it's a stupid.
It's just a stupid old traditional thing that they.
If you rush the passer 95% of the time, you're an edge rusher. You're not a damn 100%. Linebacker. I don't care.
I would say that probably the players' union probably doesn't care because it helps the linebackers. Maybe
they don't want it to be easier to use a franchise tag. They especially this exact scenario. They didn't want Roquan Smith and Tremaine Edmunds to be able to be franchise tagged. They want them to go get that huge market setting number.
Yeah.
All right, man. So we've gone through it here.
So we spent all the money. We don't have any money left.
We spend way more money than what we have.
This is like every time my wife and I go to Target.
Like,
wait a minute.
Wait. Yeah, like when I go to check out at Costco and they tell me the number, I'm like, wait, how in the world did I spend $419? That's absurd.
We only wanted a Tremaine Edmunds and we ended up with 12 other things.
I just came here for Tremaine Edmunds. That was it. So yeah, we're gonna see. It's something there. I know a lot of people are talking about it in the chat here. Next week's one of my favorite shows every year. I'm going to have Anthony Prohaska on. Aaron will be on the beach in a tropical location enjoying himself, so he's going to let me nerd out with everybody else here. I'm going to have some other guys on from some of the other shows. I think you'll see David Fox will be on. I think Kevin Massaro will be on. It'll be Anthony Prohaska and myself, maybe a couple others popping in. But we're going to be really excited. We're going to go through all the different tools, every little knob we can tweak, every lever we can flip, every little tool we can to what are all the ways we could save all the money. And we're going to put that together in a nice, concise way to show everybody, hey, here's all the things we could do if we wanted to. And we're going to have some fun with that. That'll be next week's show on Wednesday night, the salary cap extravaganza.
I love it. And then obviously your show coming up.
Yeah, we actually have behind the scenes, our man Chris Kepner is here producing for us. And we have some folks, Chris and Lauren are in kind of hanging out with him, seeing how he runs the show. So they're going to be with me on Friday night. I'm really excited. The premiere of the Greg Tompsett Sports Show, going to be talking about the biggest sports stories of the week, some fun recurring segments, some rankings, some interviews, all kinds of fun things. So really looking forward to it. It's something I've put a lot of thought into and encouragement from people like you, Aaron. And it's been a lot of fun. I'm really excited to see what we can do with it. So make sure you guys check that out. It would mean a lot to me to come and give it a shot. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And Friday in the mornings, if you haven't been coming in, producer Chris Kepner and I, we've been maintaining the Twitter Spaces. It was something we started doing here a little bit just on Buffalo Bills Football Friday, just to talk a little bit extra. And we've maintained it here, and we're going to keep doing it throughout the off season. So make sure you're tuning in for that. And we do turn that into a podcast. So if it shows up on your YouTube feed, shows up in your podcast feed, if you're subscribed here, so you'll get that as well. And then Chris has Sabres Watch Party coming up this Saturday, 10:30 p.m. San Jose Sharks.
I believe they call it Sabres After Dark. I think that's
Sabres After Dark. I've heard of that. I can't. Chris asked me. He's like, "Why don't you come on?" I was like, "Dude,
you starting something at 10:30?"
Oh yeah, I'm in bed reading maybe. And I don't get Sabres, and I don't understand hockey at all. It would be terrible to have me on. It would just be just total nonsense.
I actually did jump on once and asked a lot of nonsense questions, but had a good time with it. And I will say, between Chris, Anthony Prohaska jumps on a lot. One of our new guys, Adam Pencil, is a guy with very sharp analytics mind. He's also a huge Sabres guy. He's been great there. But I think Chris and Adam and Anthony have had some great chemistry. It's been a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to them to continue. But we have other Cover One folks pop in here or there and have fun with it. We've had some really cool guests. I know they've touched base with the guys like Joe Yurden, Chad and Anthony over at Expected Buffalo. Some really cool Sabres folks jumping on there to be able to help and know a hell of a lot more about it than what I do.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, guys. This has been a lot of fun. We actually went much longer than I expected to, but it was a fun discussion. I'm going to miss you here over the next little bit here. I wish you safe travels. I hope
be busy.
I hope that the weather pulls a Hail Mary for you and turns out a little bit better than what it's sounding like. So
I'm just excited to spend some time with the family, and it'll be warm no matter what, rain or shine. So
yeah, you're still going to have a great time. It's still a beautiful tropical location. You're still going to have a great time. But
hope so.
Again, make sure you're checking it out. The Sabres Watch Party, Spaces on Friday, the Greg Tompsett Sports Show, all the different fun things coming. We have a lot of things for you here at Cover One. But on behalf of Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.